The shuttle descended through the thick red clouds of Corvath Prime, shaking slightly as the storm winds beat against its hull. Lightning flashed across the sky like silver claws. Inside the ship, a single human sat quietly by the window, his eyes calm and observant. His name was Elias Wren, a Terran diplomat sent by Earth to attend the Galactic Conclave, a meeting of dozens of powerful species. The pilot, a small alien with green skin and glassy eyes, looked back nervously. "First time on Corvath?" he asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Yes, I heard it's a different," the pilot chuckled. "Different is one word. Dangerous is another." When the shuttle landed, the metal ramp hissed open and hot air rushed inside, thick with the smell of iron and ash. Elias stepped out into a massive landing bay filled with alien ships. The floor vibrated under his boots as giant creatures moved about, reptilian, insectoid, and furred species, each one towering over him. The tallest stood nearly 4 meters high. Elias was barely 1.8. He adjusted his simple diplomatic uniform, brushed off the dust, and walked forward. Around him, eyes turned. "Is that a Terran?" someone whispered. "He's so small, fragile little thing. How does he even breathe our air?" "Prey species," another said, and several laughed. Elias heard the words, but he didn't respond. He had learned long ago that silence could be stronger than shouting. He kept walking toward the entrance of the conclave hall, his stride steady, his face calm. Inside the hall was enormous, pillars of black stone, banners made from alien hides, and glowing blue orbs floating like stars. At the center was a circular platform where representatives from across the galaxy were gathered. The Corvathi hosts stood at the head of the chamber. They were monstrous in size, like walking nightmares, scaled beasts with clawed hands, powerful tails, and glowing yellow eyes. Their armor was made of bone and metal, decorated with the skulls of prey. To them, strength was everything. When Elias entered, conversation stopped. The silence was heavy, then broken by laughter. A large insectoid diplomat clicked its mandibles. "This is your envoy, Terrans? This child?" A 4-eyed mammalian laughed, baring its fangs. "If the galaxy ever needs someone to fetch fruit, perhaps the Terrans will be useful." The laughter spread like fire. Elias said nothing. He looked around the room calmly, studying every face. He noticed that among the Corvathi, one seat, an enormous stone throne, remained empty. The high speaker of the conclave, a tall avian alien, raised his winged arms. "Delegates, we welcome the Terran representative Elias Wren of Earth. His world has newly joined the Galactic Alliance." The crowd gave a mocking cheer. Elias stepped forward, his voice even and clear. "On behalf of Earth, I thank the conclave for its welcome," he said. "Humanity is small, yes, but we do not measure worth by size." A few scoffed. One reptilian leaned toward another and muttered, "He speaks as if he believes his own words." The High Speaker began the meeting, discussing trade routes and defense treaties. Elias listened carefully, taking notes on a small data pad, but throughout the session, he could feel the eyes of the others on him, watching, judging, amused by the presence of a small Terran among giants. When the meeting ended, a grand feast was announced in honor of the delegates. The hall transformed into a long dining space filled with alien foods, glowing meats, boiling stews, fruits that pulsed with light. The smell was strong, heavy with spice and smoke. Elias sat at a long table beside creatures who barely noticed him. They laughed loudly, drinking from metal cups the size of his head. A blue-furred warrior leaned close and said with a grin, "Careful, Terran. The food here might eat you back." Elias smiled politely. "Then I'll try to eat faster." Some nearby aliens chuckled at his calm reply. Most ignored him again, returning to their talks of battle and conquest. Suddenly, the floor trembled. A deep, thunderous sound echoed through the hall. The laughter stopped instantly. The air changed. Even the strongest aliens went silent. Then came the roar, so powerful that the plates rattled and the torches flickered. A massive door opened at the far end of the hall. From the darkness, something moved. The ground shook with each step. 2 golden eyes appeared first, glowing like twin suns. Elias turned to look, his heart steady but his curiosity sharp. The creature that entered was enormous, easily 7 meters tall, covered in thick black scales that shimmered like obsidian. Its claws were as long as swords, its teeth like blades. Across its chest was a metal crest marked with ancient symbols. The aliens around Elias whispered in awe and fear. The apex predator, the Grand Alpha Varkesh. He has come himself. Varkesh was the ruler of the Korvathi, the mightiest hunter of their kind. His presence meant something serious or dangerous. The Grand Alpha strode through the hall until he stood before the long tables. His voice was deep and growling, echoing through the room. Who brings prey into my hall? No one spoke. The high speaker hesitated, his feathers trembling. Lord Varkesh, the Terran, is a delegate. He comes in peace. Varkesh's golden eyes moved across the crowd until they stopped on Elias. He stared for several long seconds, and the hall seemed to grow colder. Then, to everyone's shock, he began to walk straight toward the human. Each step sounded like thunder. Elias stood slowly, his head tilted upward to meet the predator's gaze. The massive creature lowered his head, his snout only a few feet from Elias. He inhaled deeply, the sound like a growl through metal pipes. The air vibrated. You smell of fear, Varkesh rumbled. Elias's voice was calm. Fear is natural. What matters is what we do with it. A few aliens gasped. No one had ever spoken so directly to Varkesh before. The Alpha's nostrils flared. His teeth gleamed as he grinned. You speak bravely for something so small. Elias replied, On my world, size has never saved anyone. Only courage. Varkesh's grin widened into something between amusement and curiosity. He turned to the watching crowd. This Terran has words. Let us see if he has spirit, the hall murmured in confusion. The Alpha pointed one claw toward Elias. Tomorrow at dawn he will join me on the hunt. If he survives until the sun reaches the red cliffs, he will leave with honor. If not, the forest will decide his worth. The aliens erupted in laughter. Some clapped their claws or hands together, shouting bets on how long the human would last. An hour, one yelled. Half an hour, shouted another, but Elias only bowed his head slightly. Then I will see the sunrise with you, Lord of the Hunt. The laughter slowed. His calm tone unsettled them. Even Varkesh's eyes narrowed with interest. Brave words, the Alpha growled. We will see if they are true. He turned and left the hall, his heavy footsteps fading into the distance. The crowd buzzed with noise again, filled with laughter and whispers. Elias sat back down quietly, his hands steady. A small alien beside him leaned close and whispered, You'll die out there, Terran. No one hunts with the apex and lives. Elias looked at the creature with a soft smile. Then it will be an interesting day. He returned to his quarters that night, a small chamber built for visiting diplomats. The walls hummed with faint energy, and outside the window, the red moon of Korvath hung low and bright. Elias took off his jacket and looked at the faint scars across his arms, marks from training, survival missions, and the harsh life on early colony worlds. He had faced predators before. They just weren't always shaped like beasts. He sat down and opened his data pad, recording his notes for Earth Command. Korvath Prime is a world that values strength above all. But they misunderstand humanity. Our strength is not in muscle or bone. It's in endurance, adaptation, and will. Tomorrow I will see if they can learn that truth. He closed the pad and leaned back, staring at the red moon. The air outside was filled with the distant sound of roaring creatures. Somewhere in the forests below, the apex predator waited for dawn. Elias smiled faintly. Let's see what kind of hunt this really is, he whispered. As the night grew darker, the wind howled through the alien trees like ghosts. Lightning flashed again, lighting up the black mountains in the distance. Elias didn't sleep much. He sat awake, calm and thoughtful, preparing his mind for the morning to come. The predators would expect fear. He planned to show them something else. When the first pale light of dawn touched the horizon, Elias stood and tightened his boots. He stepped out of his chamber, the cold wind rushing against his face. Far away, a horn sounded, a deep ancient call that shook the mountains. It was the sound of the hunt beginning. Elias looked toward the crimson forests where the apex predator waited. Then, with quiet determination, he started walking toward it. The small Terran was ready. The red sun of Korvath Prime rose slowly over the dark forests. The air shimmered with heat and long shadows stretched across the rocky plains. Deep in the valley below, the sound of roaring beasts echoed through the mist. Elias Wren stood at the edge of the hunting grounds, wearing a light survival suit made of black polymer. The suit was flexible, designed for human explorers, not warriors. Around his waist hung a small tool belt with scanners, a knife, and a compact energy pistol, mostly for emergencies. A group of alien spectators stood nearby, watching with interest and amusement. They whispered among themselves, their voices filled with mockery. The Terran came, brave but foolish. He will be meat before the second hour. I bet he runs at the first roar. Elias ignored them. He stood quietly looking toward the forest. The trees were tall and red, with thick roots that twisted like serpents. The ground was covered with dust and black moss. Every few seconds something moved in the shadows, large shapes fast and silent. From the eastern ridge the ground trembled again. The sound of heavy footsteps grew louder. Then he appeared. Varkesh, the apex predator of Korvath, emerged from the fog like a living mountain. His scales glistened in the sunlight, dark as steel. Around his shoulders hung a cape made from the hide of another great beast. The Korvathi warriors followed behind him, carrying long spears tipped with bone and energy blades that shimmered with blue fire. The sight of him made even the other aliens step back in fear. Varkesh stopped a few meters from Elias. His golden eyes studied the small Terran. He lowered his head slightly, his breath steaming in the cold air. "You came," Varkesh growled. "I expected you to flee in the night." Elias met his gaze calmly. "You invited me to see your hunt." "I said I would." The Korvathi leader gave a deep, rumbling laugh. "Courage or madness? We will find which one it is." He turned and raised one massive claw toward the forest. "The rules are simple, Terran. You keep up with the pack. You hunt what we hunt. If you fall behind, the forest will claim you." Elias nodded. "Understood." The other warriors muttered to each other, amused. One said, "He won't last 5 minutes." Another added, "When the blood scent fills the air, even Varkesh won't protect him." Varkesh ignored them. He motioned for the group to move out. With a deep roar, the hunting party began their march into the Crimson Forest. The hunt begins. The Korvathi hunters moved swiftly, their huge bodies silent despite their size. Elias followed carefully, keeping his pace steady. His helmet display showed heat signatures all around. Small creatures watching from the trees, larger ones moving deeper ahead. The air was hot and thick. Every breath tasted of metal. Elias's suit sensors warned of high toxin levels, but his filter mask kept him safe. After half an hour, the group reached a wide clearing surrounded by massive stones. Varkesh raised his claw, signaling the pack to stop. "The prey moves here," he said. "A pack of razorbacks, fast and deadly. We take their leader first." Elias scanned the area. The razorbacks were creatures with long bodies covered in spikes and 6 legs that moved like springs. Their jaws could crush stone. The hunters prepared their weapons. Varkesh looked down at Elias. "Stay behind me if you wish to live." Elias smiled slightly. "I'll manage." The Alpha gave a low growl of amusement. "We shall see." Then, with a roar, the hunters charged. The forest exploded with sound, snarls, roars, and the crash of bodies colliding. The razorbacks leaped from the trees, their claws slicing through the air. Energy blades clashed against spiked hides. The smell of burning flesh filled the clearing. Elias stayed low, moving between roots and stones. His small size made him harder to see. He watched, analyzing the razorbacks' movements. They circled like wolves, protecting their leader. A massive beast twice the size of the others, its spikes glowing faintly red. Varkesh fought like a storm, crushing 2 beasts with his claws. His roar made the ground vibrate, but the razorbacks kept coming, fast and relentless. Elias spotted one breaking away from the fight, circling around toward the Korvathi flank. If it reached them, it would tear through the smaller hunters from behind. Without thinking, Elias ran toward it. He moved fast, ducking under branches, jumping over roots. The beast turned toward him, its eyes burning with hunger. It hissed and charged. Elias lifted his small energy pistol and fired twice. Blue bolts hit the creature's chest, barely slowing it down. It lunged, teeth snapping. Elias rolled aside just in time, grabbing a fallen branch. He activated his wrist module, an emergency cutting tool, and sliced the branch into a sharp spear. When the razorback lunged again, Elias thrust the spear forward into its open mouth. The beast screamed and jerked violently. Using its own momentum, Elias pulled a small energy wire from his belt, wrapping it around the creature's neck and pulling hard. The wire glowed bright blue as it cut deep. With a final twitch, the razorback collapsed. Elias fell back, breathing hard, covered in dust and blood. He stood slowly, staring at the massive body of the dead creature. Around him, the sounds of battle faded as the last of the beasts were defeated. When Varkesh turned, his golden eyes fell on the human. For a moment, the mighty Alpha said nothing. He walked toward Elias, each step shaking the ground. The Korvathi warriors followed behind, silent and watching. Varkesh looked down at the fallen razorback, then at the human who had killed it. "You slew this one?" Elias nodded once. "It attacked your flank." "I acted." The Alpha knelt slightly, inspecting the wound. He grunted, impressed. "Clean kill. Not strength, but strategy." The other Korvathi murmured to each other, surprised. One whispered, "He used the beast's own weight." Another added, "Clever for something so small." Varkesh straightened and looked at Elias again. His voice was lower now, almost respectful. "You fought with instinct. You saw the hunt, not just the danger. Few outside my kind can do that." Elias replied calmly. "On Earth, we learned long ago that cleverness is what keeps prey alive." Varkesh's eyes glowed brighter. "Perhaps you are not prey after all." He turned to his warriors and raised his claw. "Hear me, pack brothers. This Terran hunted beside us and shed blood with us. From this day, he is Huntkin." The Korvathi froze in disbelief. A murmur spread through them, half shock, half pride. Huntkin was not a simple title. It was sacred, a word that meant brotherhood through battle. A younger hunter protested, "But my lord, he is not Korvathi." "He is," Varkesh roared, silencing him instantly. "He bled in the hunt. He killed with courage. The forest itself has judged him. Who are we to deny it?" No one spoke again. Elias looked up at the massive predator, unsure how to respond. Finally, he placed his hand against the Korvathi's scaled forearm, a human gesture of gratitude. "Then may the hunt always be fair, brother." The Alpha's golden eyes softened slightly. "You speak with respect." "I accept your words, Terran." The other hunters lowered their heads in acknowledgement. One even offered Elias a piece of the slain razorback's claw, a symbol of victory. Return to the conclave. By the time the hunting party returned to the city, the news had already spread. The alien delegates gathered outside the conclave hall, whispering and arguing. The Apex called a Terran his kin? Impossible. It breaks every tradition. When Elias and Varkesh entered the hall together, the noise stopped. The sight was unforgettable. The towering Apex walking beside the small human, both marked with dust and blood. Both silent but proud. The high speaker approached, confused and trembling. "Lord Varkesh, is this true? You have taken a Terran as kin." Varkesh's voice was deep and final. "The forest chose him. He hunted with us. He killed with honor. He is one of us now." The delegates erupted in shock. Some shouted protests. Others simply stared. Elias stood quietly beside the predator, not speaking. The Korvathi symbol of the hunt, a red claw mark, had been painted on his arm by Varkesh himself. One alien diplomat sneered. "He is still prey. No hunt can change his blood." Elias looked at the speaker calmly. "Maybe not my blood. But perhaps what matters is not blood, but choice." The room went silent again. Varkesh gave a low growl of approval. "Well spoken, Huntkin." The high speaker raised his voice nervously. "This is an unusual bond. The council must discuss," but Varkesh interrupted. "Discuss all you want. On Korvath, we honor courage, not rules." He turned and left the hall, his tail sweeping across the floor. Elias followed beside him, his steps small but steady. The crowd parted silently as they passed. At dusk that evening, Elias stood on a high balcony overlooking the red forests. The sun was setting, casting long golden beams over the mountains. Varkesh stood beside him, his massive shadow stretching far across the ground. "You spoke of your world," the Alpha said. "Tell me, Terran, are there hunters like you on every part of it?" Elias smiled faintly. "There were. Many kinds. Some hunted with weapons, some with ideas. But all learned one thing: fear makes us sharp." Varkesh gave a low rumble that sounded almost like laughter. "Then perhaps we are not so different." Elias looked up at him. "Perhaps not. Maybe that's why we were meant to meet." The predator looked out over the forest again. "Tomorrow the conclave will rage. They will not understand. But let them. The hunt does not need their approval." Elias nodded. "Neither does humanity." The two stood in silence as the sun vanished behind the cliffs. In that quiet moment, the smallest being on Corvath and the greatest predator in its history watched the same horizon, not as prey and hunter, but as kin. The next morning, the city of Corvath Prime was quiet. Thick fog covered the red streets like smoke, and only the distant howls of wild creatures broke the silence. Inside the great stone fortress of the Corvathi, Elias Wren woke early. He stood at the window of his guest chamber and looked out at the crimson forests. The hunt with Varkesh, the apex predator, had changed everything. Now wherever he walked, alien eyes followed him. Not with laughter, but with confusion and curiosity. Some still whispered that it was a mistake. Varkesh has gone soft, they said. A Terran is kin? It dishonors the hunt. But others had begun to speak differently. If the Alpha calls him brother, perhaps there is more to the humans than we thought. Elias didn't pay much attention to the gossip. He was thinking about what came next. The previous day had been only a test. Varkesh had hinted at something greater, a true hunt deep in the wild lands where no one but the apex and his closest pack ever went. As the red sun rose higher, a deep horn sounded across the city. The ground trembled, and the great doors of the fortress opened. The Alpha was calling again. Elias tightened his gear, checked his suit, and stepped outside. The cool morning wind smelled of iron and dust. Varkesh was waiting at the base of the fortress stairs, surrounded by his elite hunters. They all wore bone armor and carried long, glowing spears. When Elias approached, the towering predator turned his golden eyes toward him. "You return, Huntkin," Varkesh said. "Good. I thought you might rest after yesterday's blood." Elias smiled. "I thought the hunt never rests." The Alpha gave a low rumble that sounded like laughter. "Spoken like one of us. Today we hunt the stonebacks." Elias tilted his head. "Stonebacks?" "A beast of the old world," said one of the Corvathi hunters, his voice deep and rough. "Thick skin like rock. Only fire or cunning can kill it." Varkesh nodded. "We will see which one the Terran has." The group moved out through the gates and entered the wilderness again, the journey into the wild lands. The land beyond the city was harsh and alien. The soil was dark red, scattered with jagged black stones. Trees twisted upward like claws. Strange birds with glowing feathers flew between the branches. The Corvathi moved quickly, their huge bodies agile despite their weight. Elias followed close behind, watching, learning, studying their movements. He used his scanner to map the terrain, marking energy sources and heat trails. As they walked, one of the younger hunters moved beside him. His scales were bright green, his eyes sharp with suspicion. "You may be Huntkin," the young warrior said coldly, "but you are not Corvathi. When the beast come, do not expect us to protect you." Elias looked at him calmly. "I don't expect protection. I expect respect. That's what Varkesh gave me, and what I plan to earn again." The young warrior stared for a moment, then looked away, saying nothing. After 2 hours of travel, they reached a valley surrounded by red cliffs. Deep within it, something moved, slow, heavy, and massive. The ground vibrated slightly with each step it took. Varkesh lifted his claw, signaling silence. The hunters crouched behind rocks and roots. Elias used his helmet display to zoom in on the movement. There it was, a stoneback. The creature looked like a mix between a rhinoceros and a tank. Its back was covered in thick, layered plates that shimmered like metal. 2 long horns curved from its head, and its small eyes glowed red. It moved slowly, grinding stones under its feet. Varkesh whispered, "We bring it down before it reaches the cliffs. If it escapes, it will destroy the nearby villages." The hunters nodded. They began to spread out, moving into position. Elias crouched beside the Alpha, studying the beast. "How do you kill something with skin like stone?" he asked. Varkesh smiled with his sharp teeth. "Find what is not stone." Elias scanned the beast again. The armor plates covered most of its body, but there were small gaps near the joints and under the neck. He marked them on his display. "I see weak points," Elias said quietly. "If we can lure it to turn sideways, I can hit one with a pulse charge." Varkesh looked at him, impressed. "You think like a hunter." Then the Alpha stood to his full height and raised his claw. The pack readied their weapons. "Now!" Varkesh roared. The ground shook as the hunters charged. The stoneback bellowed, its deep roar echoing through the valley. It swung its massive horns, smashing rocks apart. The Corvathi spears bounced off its armor. Elias ran to the side, staying low, trying to get a clear shot. The creature turned, slamming its tail into the ground. Dust and stones flew through the air. One hunter was thrown aside, hitting a boulder with a loud crack. Another barely dodged a charging strike. Elias reached the ridge and activated his pulse charge. He waited, watching for the right moment. The beast lowered its head, preparing to ram Varkesh. "Now," Elias whispered. He threw the small sphere toward the creature's exposed neck joint. The charge exploded in a flash of blue light. The stoneback screamed, staggering. Varkesh leaped forward, driving his glowing spear deep into the wound. The creature thrashed violently, smashing trees and rocks. Varkesh held on, roaring as the hunters joined in, striking together. Finally, the beast collapsed with a thunderous crash. The valley went silent. Varkesh pulled his spear free, breathing heavily. Then he turned to Elias, his golden eyes burning with satisfaction. "You marked its weak spot. Without that, the beast would still be standing." Elias wiped dust from his face. "You said to find what isn't stone." The Alpha grinned. "And you did." The other hunters looked at the human with new eyes. The young one who had mocked him earlier lowered his head slightly in respect. "You saw what even we did not." Elias smiled. "Sometimes small eyes see what big ones miss." Varkesh gave a deep laugh that echoed through the valley. "Well said, Huntkin." The bond of blood after the hunt, they built a small camp near the creature's body. The Korvathi cooked parts of the beast over a fire that burned blue. They ate and told stories of past hunts. Elias listened, learning more about their culture. Each Korvathi spoke of the first hunt, an ancient legend about how their kind earned the right to rule Korvath Prime. Varkesh turned to Elias. "And what of your kind, Terran? Do your people still hunt?" Elias thought for a moment. "Not always with claws or weapons. But yes, in a way. We hunt knowledge, progress, survival. Every generation we face something new and try to master it. That's our hunt." The Alpha nodded slowly. "A different kind of strength. But strength still." He lifted a piece of the stoneback's horn and placed it beside Elias. "Take this, proof of your second hunt. Few non-Korvathi have earned even one." Elias accepted it with gratitude. "Thank you, Varkesh." The other hunters struck their chests with their fists, a gesture of respect. The circle of the fire reflected in their golden eyes. Varkesh looked into the flames and spoke again, his voice lower, thoughtful. "My people believe that when two hunters share the blood of the same prey, their spirits are joined. That is why we call each other kin." Elias looked into the fire as well. "Then perhaps that is why humans and Korvathi understand each other. We both come from worlds that never gave us mercy." Varkesh's gaze softened. "Perhaps." They sat in silence for a while, watching the flames dance. Above them, the twin moons of Korvath rose into the sky, glowing red and white. The forest's judgment as they began to pack up. The ground suddenly trembled again. The hunters looked up sharply. From the north side of the valley came a new roar, louder, deeper, angrier than before. Varkesh's eyes narrowed. Another stoneback? No. Something bigger. From the darkness between the cliffs came a creature unlike any they had seen. It was twice the size of the first, with cracked armor and burning red veins running across its body. Its roar shook the valley. "The Alpha Beast," whispered one of the hunters. "The true master of this valley." Varkesh raised his spear. "Then the hunt is not over." The monster charged. Trees snapped under its weight. Elias dove aside as a massive horn tore through the air where he had been standing. The hunters scattered, attacking from all sides. Varkesh met the creature head-on, blocking its horn with his spear. The clash sent sparks flying. Elias saw that the creature's wounds from old battles glowed faintly. An unstable energy pulsed inside them. He realized what it was. Radiation from deep in the planet's core. The beast had absorbed it somehow. Elias called out, "Varkesh! The red glow, it's unstable. Strike it there." Varkesh looked back for only a second and then nodded. Together they attacked. Elias climbed onto a fallen rock, firing precise energy shots at the glowing cracks while Varkesh drove his spear into the main wound. The Alpha Beast let out a final roar that shook the mountains, then fell silent. The valley grew quiet again, filled only with the sound of wind. Varkesh turned to Elias, breathing hard but smiling. "The forest tested us, and we did not fall. It knows us now." Elias nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "And perhaps it knows humanity too." Varkesh placed a massive clawed hand on the human's shoulder. "You are no prey, Terran. You are hunter." At the edge of night, by the time they returned to the city, the stars had filled the sky. The people of Korvath lined the streets, roaring in salute as Varkesh and Elias passed. Word had spread again, how the small Terran helped slay the Alpha Beast. Inside the fortress hall, the Korvathi elders bowed to their leader. "You have returned victorious," said the oldest among them. "And the Terran stood with you?" Varkesh's voice was proud. "He did. He fought with courage and wisdom." The sun rose over Korvath Prime, casting long red shadows across the city. The air smelled of smoke, iron, and the remnants of the hunt. Word of Elias Wren's feat spread quickly. From the smallest street vendors to the tallest towers, whispers carried news of the Terran who had hunted alongside Varkesh, the apex predator. The halls of the Galactic Conclave were not silent. Delegates from dozens of worlds gathered, their faces etched with disbelief, confusion, and anger. Humans had always been considered small, weak, and fragile, creatures to laugh at, not to honor. The High Speaker of the Conclave banged his gavel on the central stone podium, attempting to restore order.
"Delegates, silence!
We must address the reports from Korvath Prime," a towering reptilian with armored scales and 4 horns shouted first. "It is impossible. The apex predator cannot recognize a human as kin. It dishonors our traditions." A winged avian screeched in agreement. "What message does this send to the galaxy? That prey may now command respect among hunters? Ridiculous." Murmurs filled the room. Some delegates crossed their arms, fuming. Others whispered cautiously, unsure how to react. The story of Elias Wren and the Alpha Beast was spreading faster than any official message could control. Elias entered the hall quietly, flanked by Varkesh. The room fell into stunned silence. Even the most skeptical delegates stopped their arguments to stare at the small human walking beside the mightiest predator in the galaxy. A mammalian diplomat muttered under its breath, "He's here?" That tiny Terran? Varkesh's golden eyes glowed as he surveyed the council. "He hunted with me. He bled with me. And he survived. That is worth more than your words." Elias kept his gaze steady, his hands relaxed at his sides. He had been mocked before, laughed at, called fragile and weak. But now, standing beside the most feared predator in the galaxy, he felt a quiet confidence. One of the elder delegates stepped forward. "Varkesh, you claim this Terran is kin? You defy every law of the hunt and insult all predator kind." Varkesh's claws scraped the floor, sending sparks along the stone tiles. "I do not insult, Elder. The hunt decides who earns kinship. This Terran has proven himself twice in the wildlands of Korvath Prime. The forest has judged him. I accept him. You may not, but that does not change the truth." The council erupted into shouts. One species banged its fists on the table, shouting, "Preposterous! He is prey. How can you call him kin?" Elias stepped forward, his voice calm and firm. "I was prey once. My people were hunted, laughed at, considered weak. But we survived. Not because we were the strongest, but because we learned, adapted, and faced every danger without fear. Strength is not only in size or teeth, it is in courage, strategy, and persistence." The hall went silent. Many delegates had never heard a human speak with such authority. Some were impressed. Others were angry. Varkesh rumbled low in agreement. "He speaks truth. He hunted alongside me and my pack. The hunt does not lie. He is kin." A Korvathi warrior stepped forward, his scales gleaming in the light. "I witnessed it. He fought with skill and cleverness. The apex beast would not call him kin unless it was deserved. We are bound by blood now." The room grew quiet again, tension thick like smoke. Some delegates lowered their heads in acknowledgement. Others clenched fists, unwilling to accept the idea. A horn sounded in the distance, and the High Speaker banged the gavel again. "Enough, we must discuss this rationally. A human, a Terran, cannot simply be declared kin by a predator of Korvath Prime. This sets a dangerous precedent." Elias looked at him steadily. "Then perhaps the galaxy will learn that respect is earned, not demanded. That courage cannot be measured by size or appearance, that even the smallest being can achieve greatness." The room grew silent again. For a moment no one breathed. Then Varkesh let out a deep growl, filling the hall with power. "You are angry because you fear what you do not understand," the Alpha said. "The forest does not lie. The hunt does not lie. The Terran has proven himself. That is the law we honor." A few delegates whispered among themselves. "Perhaps there is truth in what they say," one admitted. Elias stood quietly observing. He knew the galaxy would not accept him easily. Many would mock and challenge him again. But for the first time, they could not ignore him. They could not laugh. Testing humanity, over the next few days, the Conclave tried to test Elias's abilities. They presented him with simulations of predator attacks, tactical puzzles, and debates meant to confuse or intimidate him. Each time, Elias faced the challenge calmly. He solved problems using logic, observation, and strategy. He remained unshaken in the face of overwhelming force. Delegates began to whisper in awe. The human is small, but clever. Do you see? He survives where larger beings fail, Varkesh observed quietly. He does not fight like us, yet he wins. That is why he is kin. At one point, a reptilian diplomat attempted to trap Elias in a complex energy maze. Humans had never been trained for this level of raw danger, but Elias studied the pattern carefully. Using timing, observation, and a few carefully placed tools, he escaped without injury. The room fell silent. Even the reptilian who had designed the maze nodded in respect. Elias smiled faintly. Sometimes the best way through danger is to think, not struggle, Varkesh growled softly. Well said. Your people have much to teach. Diplomatic power shift. As Elias's reputation grew, alliances began to shift. Species that had once dismissed humanity now approached cautiously. They wanted favor with the small Terran who had earned the respect of the apex predator. Traders offered gifts. Warriors sent messengers. Entire delegations asked for meetings with Elias to learn how humans survived, strategized, and fought. The Korvathi watched all of this silently, noting the subtle shift in power. The Alpha approached Elias one evening as they overlooked the red forests from the fortress balcony. You have changed their perception in 3 days, Varkesh said. That is a greater hunt than any of the forests could offer.
How do you do it?
Elias looked at the twin moons rising over the cliffs. Courage is only part of it. The rest is persistence. Small creatures survive by thinking, adapting, and refusing to accept limitations. I show them that. That is all, the Alpha rumbled in approval. Then perhaps you will teach not only the Korvathi, but the galaxy itself. An unexpected challenge. On the 4th day, the Conclave summoned Elias for an official hearing. Delegates demanded answers, trying to humiliate him with questions about Terran biology, culture, and weaknesses. Some sneered, "How can prey survive in the wild? Your species cannot even lift heavy weapons." Others asked, "What right do you have to call yourself Huntkin?" Elias remained calm. He explained Terran history, how humans survived harsh worlds, hunted dangerous beasts, and adapted to the galaxy's challenges. He told stories of courage, resourcefulness, and intelligence. His words were simple but powerful. Every point was backed by logic, every story a lesson in perseverance. Varkesh entered silently during the hearing and stood behind Elias, a living wall of authority. His golden eyes glowed, and his sheer presence silenced any remaining mockery. "You speak for your people," the Alpha said, "and you speak truth. No council of predators can deny the forest's judgment or the hunt's honor. You are kin." Even the council's most vocal skeptics hesitated, their jaws tight with frustration. They could not argue against the proof of the hunt's, the respect earned, or the Alpha's word. Elias finished his speech with a calm voice. Strength is not always what you see. Courage is not always obvious, and kinship can come from deeds, not appearance. The hall was silent. For the first time, the galaxy saw the human as more than small, weak, or fragile. They saw someone who could face the impossible and survive. A new status. By nightfall, the news had spread across the galaxy. The small Terran was no longer just a curiosity or a joke. He was Huntkin of Korvath, an ally of the most feared predator in the known worlds. Elias walked the streets quietly, observing how the locals now treated him with cautious respect. Even creatures that had laughed before bowed slightly or nodded. Varkesh accompanied him silently. "You have done well," the Alpha said, "but the galaxy will test you again. You must be ready." Elias nodded. "I will be." Together they looked at the horizon, the twin moons casting red and silver light over the city. The path ahead would be difficult, but Elias knew that he was no longer alone. He had earned respect, fear, and a place beside the greatest hunter in the galaxy. He was not prey. He was kin. The twin moons of Korvath Prime hung low in the sky. casting pale light across the red forests. The city was quiet now, almost eerily so, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Elias Wren stood on the balcony of the fortress, looking out at the endless treetops. Behind him, the alpha predator Varkesh towered like a living monument of strength. The recent events had changed everything. The galaxy now knew of Elias, the human who had hunted alongside the apex predator and survived. Whispers of his feats had spread faster than any official message could travel. Even worlds that had mocked humans now approached cautiously, some in awe, others in fear. Varkesh's golden eyes glowed softly as he spoke. The galaxy will not accept your kind so easily. Many will try to challenge you. But that is the way of the hunt, Elias nodded. I expected nothing less. I came here knowing the risk. The question is whether I can face it without losing who I am. Varkesh rumbled low. You have already proven yourself twice. Today we face the third trial, not of beasts but of the galaxy itself. The Conclave's ultimatum by morning, the Galactic Conclave had issued an official declaration. Delegates from across the stars gathered outside Corvath Prime, demanding Elias's presence. Their message was clear. They would not accept a Terran as kin unless he passed one final challenge. Elias entered the Conclave Hall, flanked by Varkesh and a group of elite Corvathi hunters. The room was tense. Delegates from reptilian, avian, and mammalian species whispered among themselves. Many openly scowled, unwilling to respect a human. The High Speaker banged his gavel. Terran, you stand accused of overstepping your bounds. No species outside Corvath may claim kinship with our apex predator, without approval from this council. You must prove your worth, or the title will be revoked. Elias remained calm. I do not claim it lightly. I stand here only because the hunt judged me worthy. But if the galaxy requires a test, I will face it. Not for recognition, but to prove that courage, strategy, and intelligence matter as much as strength. A chorus of angry voices erupted, demanding to see the human fail, but Varkesh stepped forward, his shadow filling the hall. He fought beside me. He bled with me. He survived the Alpha Beast. No council can undo the bond forged in the hunt. But if you wish a demonstration, you will have it. The delegates fell silent. The challenge had been set. The trial begins outside the conclave. A vast arena had been prepared, a natural crater in the volcanic plains of Corvath Prime. The ground was jagged, the cliffs high, and the heat from the planet's core radiated upward. The conclave had arranged 3 trials. Each was designed to test a different quality: strength, cunning, and leadership. Strength. Elias would face a pack of Corvathi predators trained to hunt in coordinated packs. Their muscles rippled, jaws snapping, claws sharp as steel. Cunning. A complex maze filled with traps, energy fields, and moving obstacles. Only careful observation and clever planning could allow escape. Leadership. Elias would have to guide a mixed group of aliens through a simulated crisis, demonstrating command, trust, and decision-making. Elias stepped into the arena calmly. He knew he was smaller, weaker, and less physically imposing than most beings in the galaxy. But he had survived Corvath Prime, outsmarted predators, and earned the respect of the Alpha Predator. Varkesh's deep voice echoed in his mind. Remember, Terran, the hunt is not about muscle alone. Observe, adapt, and strike. That is how you survive. Trial 1. The pack. The first gate opened and the pack lunged. The Corvathi predators were fast, coordinated, and brutal. Elias dodged their attacks, weaving between rocks and shadows. He noticed patterns in their movements, how they circled, how they reacted to threats, and the subtle signals they gave each other. Using a small energy pulse, he triggered a trap that caused a rock slide, temporarily scattering the pack. Then, with careful timing, Elias led them into a narrow pass. The predators couldn't maneuver as quickly, giving him the opportunity to disable several with shock nets from his belt. Varkesh roared in approval from the cliffs above. You move like a shadow among hunters, clever and fearless. By the end of the trial, Elias had outmaneuvered the pack, not by brute force but by understanding their behavior. The council watched in stunned silence. Trial 2. The maze. The second gate opened to reveal the maze. Metallic walls rose high, energy barriers flickered, and traps clicked silently. Many delegates whispered, confident the small human would fail quickly. Elias studied the maze carefully, using his scanners to detect energy patterns. He noticed a repeating rhythm in the barrier's movement. Timing his steps, he navigated through narrow corridors, avoiding traps and energy pulses. At one point, he encountered a dead end with an active trap. He paused, observing the mechanism, then used a small energy charge to disable it without triggering the trap. Every movement was precise, calculated, and calm. After several tense minutes, he emerged from the maze, unharmed and smiling faintly. Even the most skeptical delegates were forced to acknowledge his intelligence. Varkesh's voice rumbled through the arena. "Cunning is the mind's weapon. You have wielded it well, Terran." Trial 3. Leadership. The final trial was the most complex. A simulation of a planetary crisis awaited, an unstable energy core threatening a colony of settlers. Delegates had assembled a mixed group of aliens, each with different abilities and temperaments. Elias was tasked with leading them to safety. He had no special authority, only guidance, observation, and strategy. At first, the group resisted. The reptilian soldier argued with the avian scout. Some ignored his instructions. But Elias remained calm, issuing clear commands, analyzing their strengths and using their differences to his advantage. When a simulated collapse blocked their path, he directed the team to create a chain of support, combining their strengths to cross safely. When energy beams threatened them, he calculated timing and sequences, leading the group past danger. By the end of the simulation, all delegates had safely reached the designated area. Elias had not only survived but had successfully commanded beings far larger and stronger than himself. Varkesh stepped forward, lowering his massive head. "Leadership is born in the hunt. You have proven yourself worthy again, Terran. Not by blood alone, but by wisdom and courage." The council was silent. Many were ashamed that their prejudices had been wrong. Others grudgingly nodded. Recognition across the galaxy, the conclave convened once more, officially recognizing Elias Wren as Huntkin of Korvath. Delegates signed proclamations, acknowledging the human's courage, intelligence, and cunning. Elias stood beside Varkesh as the Alpha Predator roared in the city square. The roar echoed across Korvath Prime, a symbol of respect and unity. Citizens and visitors alike cheered. The story of the small Terran who had faced impossible odds spread faster than any fleet, across planets and star systems. For the first time, humanity was seen as more than fragile. Their potential, their ingenuity, and their courage were finally acknowledged. Even rival species approached Elias with caution, some with admiration, others with fear. Varkesh turned to the human. "You have changed the galaxy's perception, Terran. Others may mock, but they cannot ignore you. That is the power of kinship forged in the hunt." Elias smiled. "Then let us ensure the galaxy learns from it, not through fear but through deeds, one hunt at a time." A new era begins. Over the following weeks, Elias trained alongside the Korvathi hunters, learning new techniques and sharing Terran strategies. He taught small groups of warriors how to adapt, think, and survive in ways they had never considered. The galaxy began to take note. Humans were no longer the weakest species. They were clever, resilient, and worthy of respect. Elias understood that this was only the beginning. There would always be those who doubted, who challenged, who mocked, but he now had allies like Varkesh, and the bond they shared was stronger than any prejudice. From the balcony of the fortress, he watched the twin moons rise again over the crimson forests. He thought of Earth, his home, and how far he had come. Varkesh's massive form stepped beside him, shadowing the human completely. "You have learned the ways of the hunt, and now, Terran, you are more than survivor. You are hunter. You are kin." Elias nodded, looking out across the forests and the stars beyond. "Then we continue, one hunt at a time, together." The Alpha Predator lowered his massive head in silent agreement. In that moment, Predator and human were equals, bound by respect, courage, and shared victories. The galaxy had mocked the small Terran once. Now it would remember him forever. Elias Wren had become more than kin. He had become a legend,